Hey guys, Caesar from Lightworks. Today we're going to be going over a proper procedure on how to aim your headlight assemblies and your fog light assemblies to make sure you're maximizing performance, your safety, and of course you're not upsetting oncoming traffic. So one of the first things you're going to want to do with your headlights is go to the front of the lens. It's a little hard to pick up there, but you're going to see VOL or VOR. So that's going to be on the front of the assembly. On the Morimoto lights, we actually have a VOL, and on the original LED headlights that came on this Foreigner, we have VOR. And VOR indicates that you're going to be using the right side of the cutoff to use for your aiming adjustment guide, and VOL means you're going to be using the left side of the cutoff. We're going to demonstrate this later in the video to show you exactly how it all comes together. So we're using a stock Foreigner LED assembly. Obviously this is outside the vehicle. In a little bit we'll go inside. But on most vehicles you're going to be using a Phillips head screwdriver, and that's going to come in contact with a gear, and as you turn the screwdriver it will adjust the headlight adjuster. Every OEM headlight, at least modern day headlight, has ability to get in and make an adjustment from the engine bay without taking out the lamp, without disassembling the car. Sometimes you have to take some plastics out of the way, but most of the time there's a little hole, you put the screwdriver in and you'll turn that Phillips head screwdriver. Sometimes it's a thumb wheel, other times it's an 8mm, but in this case we have a screwdriver going in. This is the back of the factory LED assembly for the fog lights on this Foreigner. Halogen one is actually the same. It looks like it has a thumb wheel as well. Since it's a fog light, you'll be able to adjust this from the bottom. So most of the times you need to come in through the splash guard. Sometimes you need to peel back the liner and you will be able to make the adjustment. We're gonna be going over on how to make the adjustments in a little bit, at what distance from the wall that you want to be measuring at and what height you want to set these to. Don't assume because you got your car brand new from the dealership that the lights are adjusted properly. In fact, there are no provisions that require manufacturers to set the lights perfectly. So sometimes, even if you have a hunch that something's not quite right or you're not getting the performance that you want, you're going to want to check your alignment, and again, it'll maximize the performance. So you're going to see two dots and they indicate the center of each light. That is the high beam one that we're in front of right now. That's our center point. We could move the vehicle directly in front of the wall and use this as a height, but in a little bit, when we're measuring to the center point of the projector, you can visually eye it out, but please understand that there is a small dot in the plastic and that'll help you find the center point of your low beam or high beam. It's also important to note the low beam and high beam are not separately adjustable on most modern day lamps. Some of the Japanese vehicles actually have a little bit of a cable that runs from low beam to high beam area, but in most cases when you adjust your low beam, you're also adjusting your high beam because they're on the same internal frame. So when we're making the adjustment for the low beam, usually you cannot adjust the high beam separately, and in the video we'll show you exactly how to do that. All right, so these are the Morimoto XB LED assemblies on the 5th gen Foreigner. We've zoomed in and you can see the VOL right on the plastic lens. So we're going to back up a second. We're also going to show you the center point of the headlight. So you can see the Morimoto has one right here. It's a little bit hard to see in the video possibly. And that's what we're going to use as the center point to aim these headlights. And before we get into this, it's important to know, again, just a quick reminder, a good idea to have a half a tank of gas. Let's say you got that bike rack on the back of the vehicle, have it on there if it's usually on there. Have the vehicle in the same state that it's usually in. And if you want to get real technical, have somebody hop in the driver's side seat, and that way you can make your adjustments with somebody in the car and it'll be as exact as it possibly can be. So we've got the vehicle 25 feet away from the wall. Again, nice level surface here in the shop. It might be a little bit harder for you to find that, you know, behind a supermarket or a warehouse or something, but try to look for a very level surface. That's critical. Definitely use the tape measure. Make sure you're exactly 25 feet away because every degree of change makes a big difference, and if the distance is off, your headlights won't be properly aligned. Now, we've already determined that this is a VOL headlight, meaning we're going to be using the left side of the beam, the left side of the cutoff, which we'll demonstrate shortly, for our reference point. This is 43 inches off the ground. anything above 39 inches, 39 and a half inches, is going to be 3 inches below the height of this. So if this is 43 inches to our reference point, on the wall we're looking for 40 inches. Now it's important to mention this is a slightly lifted foreigner. So if you've got a pickup truck, if you've got anything with a lift kit, any kind of truck or SUV, you're likely at this point and you're going to be using that 3-inch rule. Now most cars that we align here, if it's a sedan or compact, something lower to the ground, we use the 2-inch rule, okay? And that is up to 34 inches. In between 34 and 39, you can go 2.5 inches. But again, if you already know that you've got a lifted vehicle, you've got a truck, use the 3-inch rule. All right, so I've marked off the wall with this piece of tape. You can use any kind of tape or anything to mark the wall. You can even use a Sharpie if you really wanted to, right? So I've marked it off at 40 inches. And again, my beam, the center of the beam was at about 43 inches, so roughly right here. I've marked it off. I've purposely misaligned my low beam so we can use this for the video as a reference guide. Now, this is what we call the cutoff. Okay, that's a cutoff because below it you have light from your projector. Above it, sometimes you have no light depending on the type of projector it is. For this purpose of this video, these are projector headlights. Projector headlights have a much more defined cutoff and it's a lot easier to see that stark contrast between light and no light. So it's better for a reference. But if you're using a halogen headlight, halogen reflector headlight, has a little bit more light bleed, use the top of the cutoff where there is no more light kind of bleeding over as your reference point. When we say VOL and we're using the left side of the beam to aim, this is the left side of the beam. And it goes all the way to what we call the step up. If we're using VOR, it's going to be the right side of the beam. And we're going to be using the tallest part of the cutoff for our alignment procedure. So in a moment, I'm going to go to the vehicle. I'm going to use the adjuster. I'll show you how to do that. And I'm going to start by raising the height of the driver's side headlight so that way it matches the tape. And I've aligned the tape so that the top of the tape is exactly 40 inches. And it's important to reference that because you might be using 1-inch tape, 2-inch thickness tape. So we're going to be getting the left side of the cutoff right to the top of this tape. So we got the hood popped open. This is the factory, I guess you can say, black shroud cover that goes over the top of the engine bay area. And you can see there's a hole right in here. And we're going to try to zoom in there a little bit and show you that you can see the gear. It's a little bit hard to demonstrate, but you're essentially putting the screwdriver in and you're going to be able to turn it. And if we reference the wall right now, as I turn the screwdriver, you can see my beam is getting a little higher. And this takes a bunch of turns. So if the left side is what we're focusing on, we want it to be even with the top side of that tape, and we would call that perfect. And this is why it's very important to do any sort of adjustment, even if it's just a minor tweak about 25 inches from the wall, about 25 feet away from the wall. Reason being is when you make these small adjustments, people do them sometimes inside their garage, they're only 3 feet away from the wall. You're not going to see that beam moving much when you're only a few feet away from the wall or a few inches from the wall. So always do your headlight adjustments if you're doing it this technical way at exactly 25 feet, but you can be anywhere in a parking lot if you just want to merge the lights a little bit better. Sometimes they're misaligned at a distance. Make small tweaks, but make them at a further distance, and that way you can see the degree of change better. All right, we're on the passenger side headlight, and I need to aim this down a little bit. Some people stagger their lights like this. You would generally do that in a halogen setting, so you have a little bit more light on the right side, not blinding oncoming traffic. But when you're talking about projectors, you align them on the same plane, meaning you're using the left side of that beam, the left side of that cutoff to match perfectly. And that looks pretty good. Again, Morimoto's using a 3 projector system. It's a little bit hard to see, but you're making sure that the left side of this beam is equal with this. And those look pretty good. All right, we're moving on to the fog lights now. Now the fog lights, very similar procedure. Ideally, you're going to want to do this with the vehicle in the same position, again, 25 feet away from the wall. The only thing that changes is basically the inches and the difference that you're going to set the lights at. Now, if we're moving on to the 4Runner, again, this is slightly lifted. Any vehicle that has the fog light this high off the ground, you're going to want to use about a 3 to 4 inch change in terms of the height from the fog light beam off of the ground. Now this applies to OEM halogen fog lights that have a pretty distinct cutoff. If you go and throw a generic LED bulb in a fog light housing that's designed for halogen, you're usually going to see a lot more light scatter. It's going to be very, very hard to aim those. For the purpose of this video, this 4Runner has the Elite Series by Dynamics. You can use other fog lights such as the SS3 by Dynamics, Morimoto 4-banger, but depending on the optic, there is more light bleed from the cutoff, above the cutoff. You're going to want to use that to your discretion and get those adjusted properly so that when you're coming down the road, it doesn't look like your fog lights are blinding everybody. They absolutely should not be under any circumstance. So again, lifted 4Runner. This is at 32 inches off the ground. If we were going to be measuring off of the wall, we would be setting it at about 28 inches off of the ground in terms of the height, and we'll show you that in just a moment. Now, this goes for any vehicle over 20.5 inches off the ground. Most vehicles, like a sedan, you'll be at about 1.5 inches below the height. So again, the higher the vehicle is off the ground, the higher the headlights, the higher the fog lights, the adjustment angle is a little bit more aggressive because you don't want to be on the road blinding everybody when you're driving down the highway in a vehicle that has the headlights higher off the ground or somebody lifted it. All right, and this is it. Lights off in the shop. Again, nice level surface. Hopefully you can find something in your neighborhood or you can borrow a buddy's garage or warehouse, whatever they got. The lights are properly aligned. You can see the low beams. Again, VOL, we're using the left side of the cutoff. In this case, the right side of the cutoff matches too, but for our height demonstration and for our markings on the wall and all that, you're using the left side of the beam. The fog lights, they're nice and level with one another. They're set at the appropriate height. And the next step is really the road test. And again, the vehicle should be set up as it normally is with the gear, with the amount of gas that you generally have, passenger. And if you need to make an adjustment after you get on the road, maybe somebody flashes you, you can get out and you can make a small adjustment. Again, make the adjustments small because they go a long way in the distance. This all magnifies down the road. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Check out our website. It's www.lightworks.net. We'd be happy to help you out. And we look forward to hearing from you. Subscribe and see you soon.